control it.
Now, of course, it appears that this operation has also seen one tragedy so far. The Ministry of Defence say it was an accident, but one Chinook helicopter with 16 people on board, 12 of whom appear to be British, have been lost. I mean, they are very vulnerable machines, aren't they?
Well, it's not so much the vulnerability of the machines. You know, the fact is we're at war, and there's always going to be mistakes. There's always going to be confusion, and I think we've got to sort of just calm down a bit about whether these aircraft are safe. They are safe, but we are at war, and unfortunately, soldiers do get killed, whether it's.
It's an awful sound, the sign that once again a night of destruction lay ahead. The city's air defense batteries fired into the sky, more in defiance than anything else. But what could stop this? These were the first bombs in the very heart of Baghdad. Buildings around the planning ministry were ripped apart. Look closely at the moment it was hit, and you can see the 3 huge explosions around the compound. The target was left in flames, a huge plume of smoke drifting across the city. The authorities say that some civilians were caught in the attack. But by this morning, you could see the impact of the night's bombardment.
For a couple of hours, and there have been some Iraqi casualties in these encounters, but it is said that many of them are simply handing themselves in and being dealt with as prisoners of war under the Geneva Convention. We can also show you some of the latest pictures of British Royal Marines who've been involved in a nighttime amphibious landing near Basra. They have been sent in there to secure the key oil installations near the Al-Faw Peninsula, and in the last few minutes, a British Forces spokesman has said that those installations have indeed been secured. And as our correspondent in Kuwait reported earlier, at least 4 Iraqi soldiers have been killed.
They're ready for it. Behind them, Eamon, you can see a string of warrior fighting vehicles. These are armoured personnel carriers. Not only do they have their own heavy weapons on the front, but they also are fully loaded with a company of Irish Guards. Those Irish Guards themselves wearing full body armour, carrying assault rifles, ready to pop out the back at a moment's notice once they go over the border. Behind that, there's another string of support vehicles. You've got Sultan and Spartan armoured personnel vehicles. Some of those vehicles will be carrying people that will go into fight if necessary. Others are there in terms of providing support from a point of view of telling everyone else in the battle group what's going on. There's a lot of technical wizardry and things going on as we speak. Just take a look to the road behind me. You can see a fleet of Land Rovers now working their way up towards the border. Again, these are support vehicles. They'll be carrying specific equipment that's needed for any form of battle. There'll also be commanders and various other people in there going in up to the front line just to work out exactly what is needed. I'm going to have to go now because I think I'm being told that we have just 2 minutes to go. Let me just show you the kit we have to use to broadcast to you here. Quite a lot of it to wrap up, Eamon, so if you don't mind, we're going to say goodbye. The next time we speak to you, I would think we will be in southern Iraq, and the job that these guys are going to be doing, this heavy armour of the British Army, is going to be supporting the US Marines who have fairly light gear working their way through southern Iraq.
Rather than coming straight into a formation and attacking it, what will happen is the armour, because of our mobility and manoeuvre, will go round the back, cut it off, so that they feel isolated, we don't have to fight them, and they surrender.
They're incredible pictures, aren't they? I mean, as you say, they
these must be old pictures, Fiona, because they're nighttime pictures. So
yeah, they've only just come in, but obviously they obviously happened overnight in the desert there.
And I'm just, you know, quite thrilled that our soldiers are about to go into action, but equally confident that they'll do well and not have many casualties.
The Foreign Secretary has just said, apparently, Bob, that he doesn't know how long this war is going to last. Obviously, he doesn't, but he's urged people to be patient.
Well, we all hope it's over quickly. And frankly, looking at the way the armour's moving, we saw the 7th Cavalry moving at speed, it's going at a hell of a lick. And if it's going at 35 kilometres an hour, it won't be long before it reaches its objective, which may well be Baghdad.
Hello there, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Clive, where are you?
Okay, I'm on the Al-Faw Peninsula, the very southern tip of Iraq. I'm with Royal Marines from 40 Commando, the first troops to set foot in Iraq as part of the coalition effort to get Saddam Hussein out of power. They've achieved their immediate aim, we understand, and that is to secure the oil infrastructure in this area. That is one oil installation there and 2 oil platforms further down towards the south. Now, this is seen as a crucial first stage in the ground campaign, preventing any fleeing Iraqi troops or Saddam Hussein's men from blowing these installations up, which would, of course, have caused a huge ecological disaster. So some success here so far this morning.
Yeah. Now, Clive, sorry, we're just. Can you move your camera around and let us see exactly where you are and what is going on around you?
Okay, well, we'll move the camera around a little bit here. As you can see, it's quite a sort of flat, dusty plain. You may be able to pick up just behind me here some of the armour and some of the Royal Marines who are moving around behind, securing the area. Along that very road, about 2 hours ago, a number of prisoners of war, POWs, Iraqi soldiers gave themselves up. One had a white flag. They walked down the road with their hands up and lay on the ground and were searched by the Marines here. That has been happening all morning, in fact. And also behind me here, if we can just move the camera around a little bit, we can see dug in positions some more Royal Marines here. They're keeping a lookout ahead of them for any Iraqi bunkers that may still be in operation. Many of those bunkers were actually blown up overnight by attacks from an AC-130 bomber, but there are still possibly Iraqi positions over there. And if we move even further around here, we can see the actual oil installation itself. Huge oil silo there, and as I say, to my left, further down behind me, are the 2 oil platforms. So
they'd flown into the unknown in RAF Chinooks, believing in their task.
I'm very proud of being in the Corps of the Royal Marines, and I truly believe in what I'm doing tonight.
This is the career that these lads choose, as me included, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
The Marines met little resistance inside Iraq and their mission was deemed a success. A British correspondent travelling with them said they saw scores and scores of Iraqi soldiers surrendering to the troops. In daylight, they were followed by other Royal Marines from the Ark Royal. As they headed for the key southern Iraqi city of Basra, they flew over coalition hovercraft apparently bound for Iraq. The build-up of coalition forces inside the country is clear. Across the sand flats, the troops are moving in. These soldiers may not know what to expect at the end of their flight, but they do know they are backed up in force. Already there are signs that the US Marines have taken Iraqi prisoners. Securing Basra is a key strategy. The Royal Marines landed this morning with that task in mind. Across the south of Iraq, there's been little resistance so far to the invasion. But the deaths of 8 British and 4 American soldiers in a helicopter crash inside Kuwait is a blow.
Regrettably, during the deployment phase, a US helicopter crashed. There were 8 UK servicemen from 3 Commander Brigade and 4 US aircrew on board. None survived the crash. There is no evidence that the helicopter crashed due to enemy fire. Our mission continues, Pamari Pateram.
British military officials say they hope to secure a border town 20 miles south of Basra in the course of today.
Live since early this morning, the ultimate reality war, extraordinary simultaneous footage of the Allied advance into Iraq. The convoy stretching for some 10 miles across the plains of the southern Iraqi desert, described by an American reporter.
The pictures you're seeing are absolutely phenomenal. These are live pictures of the 7th Cavalry racing across the deserts in southern Iraq. A short while ago, perhaps 30 minutes ago, this unit took some incoming fire, never came within more than half a kilometer of the 7th Cavalry.
Within the last hour, the first pictures of surrendering Iraqi troops. There's been little resistance. Allied columns are now said to be 90 miles inside Iraq. During the night, the skies above northern Kuwait were lit up by artillery bombardment on Iraqi command and control centres. Units of the US 3rd Infantry Division encountered an Iraqi observation post.
It's real hazy and cloudy, so it's hard to see them at night sight.
4 casualties there.
4 Iraqi dead.
Roger.
There have been huge explosions over Basra. UK forces have been assigned the task of taking Iraq's oil centre. Elements of the 7th Parachute Regiment provided artillery cover as Royal Marines and American forces moved to secure the southern oil fields around the Peninsula, though as yet the border town of Qasir remains under Iraqi control. A huge pall of smoke over the area suggests they may be too late to prevent the sabotage of some oil wells. It's thought at least 3 are ablaze. Overnight, a Sea Knight helicopter like this one crashed over Kuwait, claiming the first Allied casualties of the war. The Defence Secretary has confirmed that 8 British and 4 American soldiers were killed in what's been confirmed as an accident. The helicopter was not brought down by enemy fire.
Pictures with the situation around the Al Faw Peninsula, the oil installation which the British Marines took overnight. Very, very little resistance there, though they do say that some 4 Iraqis died, were killed during exchanges as the British Marines came in to take over this very important installation. It's basically where they fill up the oil tankers, so very important to secure that. Equally, we're hearing from American sources that this just north of Qasir, the port, which is situated just over the border from Kuwait, just inside Iraq, some 30 or so Iraqi soldiers surrendered there. Nothing like the surrenders that we saw on the scale of the 1991 Gulf War, but then those soldiers had been bombarded by air for many weeks. But what I have got for you is the document. This is called the Articles of Capitulation. What's going on is that as forces move into southern Iraq, they're basically getting local commanders to surrender bit by bit, sort of jigsaw puzzle, eat away at the Iraqi forces, to come and surrender just on a very local basis. They sit down and they sign up to this, amongst other things, to demonstrate your surrender. Place all your vehicles in squares, in the open, side by side, 1,000 metres away from all barrack supplies and food. Don't destroy any or damage any vehicles or equipment, and turn all the gun barrels over the rear deck of the vehicle in the uniform direction, and tow away all artillery and defence pieces and put them into a passive travel mode. Turn off all your radars. So that's what they're being instructed to do. That's how you demonstrate that you don't want to fight.
In Iraq, and in this one small, dangerous corner at least, in control. Royal Marines from 40 Commando were digging in this morning after a night at the cutting edge of the drive to topple Saddam Hussein. Their job was to seize oil installations, part of the mission to stop the dictatorship burning Iraq's oil fields. The message so far, job done.
So far it's proceeding as planned. The first part of the mission was to secure key oil infrastructure in southern Iraq in order to prevent an environmental disaster and to enable the restoration of the oil infrastructure post any conflict. And I'm pleased to say that that part of the mission has been successful.
The fiercest overnight fighting was around Basra, because the coalition planners know that if they can take this southern city quickly, it will send a signal to the rest of Iraq that defeat is inevitable and resistance pointless. The Iraqis simply can't match British and American firepower. One armoured column has already punched its way almost 100 miles into Iraq, although there could still be difficulties further on up the road.
Stop there.
And success on the battlefield brings problems of its own, not least the demands of processing prisoners. There are signs already that Iraqi resistance could crumble, but there are still big questions to face in the coming days about whether Saddam's elite Republican Guard will fight harder than the regular army troops who have already surrendered. Kevin Connolly, BBC News.
Forces here this morning. There's a vehicle which we think may belong to them behind me here. There's been bombing, there's been artillery fire, and there's been the sound of aircraft going over. That was about a couple of hours ago. We've been hearing reports, which I have to stress to you are absolutely not confirmed, and I'm not in a position here to be able to confirm them, but that American forces have moved against the Kirkuk oil fields, which are only about 15 miles, start about 15 miles from here, and one account says they may even have secured them. As I say, I'm not in any way able to confirm them. We are here without the agreement either of the American Special Forces or really most of the command of the local Kurdish forces. So there's no possibility of checking these things. All we do know is all that fighting was down in the direction of the Kirkuk oil fields, which are the largest in Iraq. So they must have been a major target for the coalition forces.
One of the first to go, taking the commanding officer, developed technical trouble and had to return. He told me smoke from burning oil made flying conditions very tough. With dozens of aircraft in the sky and just before 3 in the morning, one of the helicopters, a CH-46, was seen by the crew of another to nosedive into the ground of the Kuwaiti desert, about 7 miles short of the Iraq border. It exploded almost immediately. Marines in other helicopters thought it was an oil fire. Within minutes, they were all heading back to base. We had been waiting in the desert to go next on the same type of helicopter. So this mission, which got off the ground only to run into disaster, has now been aborted. A great setback, but most of all, a great tragedy. That every man on board the helicopter was killed. 8 British servicemen, including 5 Royal Marines and the 4 US crew. So the Marines wait, and shortly we will board other helicopters for Iraq. This disaster a tragic reminder that in war the first casualty is the plan, and that with it here today have gone the lives of many brave British and American troops, aircrew and Marines.
Actually, because can you confirm that Al-4 has been taken by the Allied troops?
Yes, Royal Marine Commandos left from this camp last night at about 7 o'clock your time. 5 Chinook helicopters with Charlie Company of 40 Commando. It's about a 20-minute flight. They landed, they took the oil pipelines and the vital outlet into the Arabian Gulf and secured it. They came under slight fire from the Iraqis. They were also mortared, but that was dealt with by the huge guns on Bubian Island from 2-9 Commando Royal Artillery. There was a lot of hardware going down last night, and as it stands at the moment, we have both 40 Commando on Al-4 and 4-2 Commando. So 2 Commando units on the peninsula as we speak at the moment.
David, you can confirm no casualties in that ground attack, no?
As far as we know, there were no casualties on the Al-4, but you will be aware that there was what appears to be a tragic accident last night. 8 Royal Marines lost their lives as they were being ferried by an American military helicopter to Iraq. It appears to have crashed in the desert not far from here. In fact, I actually saw the ball of flame that was created by the aviation fuel going up.
Of British and American troops have secured positions in the south of Iraq. These pictures just in from the front line show Iraqi prisoners of war being escorted by British troops. Around 60 are said to have surrendered to troops from Royal Marine 40 Commando as they advanced into southern Iraq.
Probing the defences in order to know how easy it will be to continue with a larger amount of armour.
Right, and is your belief that the resistance will become a lot stiffer from the Iraqis as they head towards Baghdad? We know that the Republican Guards and the Special Republican Guards, that's where they're based.
And they're likely to be very much in the sort of close bit of Baghdad, I think. Already we've had perhaps more resistance than people expected even.
Schedule, because there were reports that there were 2 battalions of the Republican Guard